refocus for a second and just go through this together. So what kind of conjectures did you come up for a tangency? Yep, go ahead.
Yes.
So tangent to the x-axis, and if it's an odd route,
It
passes through. It's kind of flattened when it passes through the x-axis. I'll put somewhat flattened. Good. Okay. Anything else about tangency? I think that's pretty much it, right? All right. What did you get for end behavior? Let me just pull this up a little bit. So now you guys are stuck because I have to use a different group. So what kind of things did you get for end behavior?
So there's like a negative sign to be like in terms of higher equation. So the end of the graph usually went down.
Okay, so a negative sign, the end went down.
Yeah.
Okay, did anybody split it up talking about the degrees of the polynomial and things? Yeah, go ahead.
The higher the degrees, the more complex the graph got.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. What other things about degrees? Yeah?
If it's even, they both go in the same direction.
Okay, so if it's an even, they both go in the same direction. And if it's odd, they go in opposite directions. Okay, so if it's even and they both go in the same direction, how do you know if they both go up versus both go down? What's the difference there? What about this group? I haven't heard much from this group. What do you guys think? How do I, like, where are the even ones? We have G and I. Well, on G they both go up, but on I they both go down. So what was the difference? The leading coefficient. So if it's negative, they do what? They go down, and if it's positive, they go up. So if A is greater than 0, they both go up. And if it's less than 0, they go down. Okay. What about the odd? Can you talk about the odd the same way? Like, if A is greater than 0, they both do something different? Do they have similarities there? So let's look at odds. Like, even looking at E and F, they're both odd. One's positive, one's negative. They do different things. What do you think? What's the difference between E and F? The coefficient. So when the coefficient was positive, the graph rose from left to right, right? And when it's negative, does it fall in general? Okay, does that hold true? Like if you look at H, and H has a negative coefficient and an odd power, did H and F kind of do the same thing? It's falling? Okay. So it goes, how do you want to word it? If it's positive, you want to say it rises to the right? Would that make sense to you? Or I put, went from negative infinity to infinity. And if it's A is less than 0, it goes from infinity to negative infinity. Does that make sense? Okay. What are some of the basic even and odd functions that you ever learned? And you probably have never thought about them as even and odd functions I'll leave this up because you're gonna wanna copy it down in a minute. But I would have a hard time if I was at a test and I had to remember all this at once, I would get something messed up. So I want to bring it back to basic stuff for you so that you always can remember this. So what is the first function that we ever teach you? What kind of functions? Yep.
Positive is positive, negative positive is.
Oh, you're thinking integers, stuff like that? Okay, I'm thinking linear. Like, that's okay. So on a linear function, right, if you have a linear function, the graph looks like this, or it looks like this, right? What's the difference between this graph and this graph?
Left one's positive,
This one's positive, this one's negative. Okay? So this one goes from negative infinity to infinity, and that one goes from infinity to negative infinity. What's the degree of a linear graph? 1, right? Because it's just like y equals 2x, so the degree is 1. Good. What's the next graph that can help us out? You probably started to learn in Algebra 2. Probably ad nauseum learned in Algebra 2. Well, it's not cubic, it's not linear, it's kind of in between. What would it be? The quadratic, yeah. And what's the other name for a quadratic one? What type of quadratics did you learn?
parabolas.
The parabolas, right. So parabola and parabola, right? This parabola, what happens? It's positive, a is greater than 0, and they both go up. This one, a is less than 0, so they both go down. So how can you, what's the degree of a quadratic? 2, the degree is 2. So how can you use this to help you with that? Yep.
Okay, so linear equations have a degree of 1, quadratics have a degree of 2. So it's very similar to those where an odd degree will have a negative to positive or positive to negative.
Yep.
Whereas a degree of even would have a positive to positive or negative to negative.
Right. So do you see how you can correlate that? Like if you get stuck on a test and you're like, I can't remember which way they go, if you just draw a linear and a quadratic, it's going to help you because the linear is the odd function and the quadratic is your even function. Okay? Does that help? Do you think that that kind of helps you out to generalize everything? Okay. If you want, we have 5 minutes left. You can take a picture of this so that you can write it down. You can write it down. You should have this written down for yourselves, okay? You want to finish this worksheet for homework.